Marketers Live, a show that promises to be long on marketing insights and short on overhyped buzzwords. We'll be drinking in the latest tactics and the coolest gin. Yep, this may be the only live marketing show that also features a gin tasting. This show is being live streamed via our friends at Restream. And if you want to drink along at home, today we're tasting Citadel Jardin d'Ete and good old Bombay Sapphire Gin. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from my home studio in New York City. In my latest book, Renegade Marketing, 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, I offer a playbook that covers all sorts of challenges, from driving demand to creating a category to measuring impact. But one scenario I didn't address is what to do when your organization acquires one or more companies in a short period of time. This happens a lot more than you think, particularly in the VC and PE world, and creates all sorts of unique challenges, from acculturating employees to reassuring current customers, to product integration, to messaging adaptation, to rebranding and more. It's a lot. To solve these issues, we have three awesome CMOs who also happen to be active members of CMO Huddles. So with that, let's bring on Julie Feller, head of marketing at US Legal. Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you, Drew? Thanks for having me today.
I'm delighted. Now, first, where are you?
I am in sunny San Diego, California.
Love San Diego.
I know it could be a lot worse.
It is. Yes. Just a little bit of heaven. Anyway, I couldn't help but notice that you interned many moons ago at the Sacramento River Cats. By the way, that was the first time I'd ever heard the term. There must be a story there, right?
Yes, I did intern for the River Cats back when I was in college at UC Davis. They were at the time the AAA affiliate of the Oakland A's, and I believe now they're the affiliate of the San Francisco Giants. I feel like kind of dating myself, or like my parents saying this, but it was back when on a Wednesday you could get a beer and a hot dog for $4 at the games. And I helped out with a variety of activities and marketing and promotions, including the in-game promotions. So I got to shoot t-shirts out of a cannon, lead the mascot around the stadium, and all those other type of events that I feel like are kind of a marketing and promotions rite of passage, so to speak.
Well, and obviously you learned a lot about sort of grassroots marketing, because I mean, one of the things I've noticed about AAA baseball is, people are not necessarily there for the game, but there's the level of entertainment provided is epic.
Absolutely. It was a lot of families, a lot of people there from the local communities and colleges. And so there was a lot of activity happening other than the baseball game.
So yeah, so shooting, the swag matters. And it's funny because, in Huddles right now, we're talking about events and everybody's really rusty, or it seems like they're rusty, and they're all saying, oh yeah, right, before, during, and after. And you really got to know the during part of the live event experience. So I'm sure that's paying off for you right now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get to the topic at hand. During your 2.5 years at US Legal Support, how many companies has your company acquired?
We have acquired 3 companies since I've been with US Legal Support.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, that's just a lot. So, and what that means is, and just to give folks that are listening either late today or later on, you acquire 3 sets of employees, 3 sets of brands, 3 sets of culture, all of these things. When you look at the challenges that I've described from a marketing perspective, what was the biggest one that for you in bringing and integrating these acquisitions?
I think the biggest challenge across all of them has always been how to integrate the new brand so that we have a cohesive story, but we don't lose the essence of the acquired property or their market position. And so learning and understanding their current positioning, what's worked well for them, but also what hasn't worked well for them, really digging into everything, whether it be the messaging, their digital strategy, events, you name it. It really helps to kind of uncover and drive some of the decisions that need to be made. And from a challenge perspective too, I think that a close tie would be client retention. And they really do go hand in hand, because probably not surprising, we found that we need proper communication with the existing clients of both our existing organization and the one that we're acquiring, so that everyone is aware of the changes, they feel comfortable and taken care of. So it's really important that we help mitigate the market confusion, avoid hurting any potential deals that we have in the pipeline from either organization. And with the new branding, we just really need to get it right. And sometimes we don't know until we try something. So when we work with the acquired company's team, communication is just so key. We need to make sure that we both have our current ways of doing things, and what we try to do is keep the same goal in mind. We want to serve our customers as best as we can. So when we keep that the central focus of what we're doing, it really helps to keep us aligned and guide our decision making.
So I want to dig in on a couple of things that you said. First, you talk about trying to assess what's working from a marketing perspective. And I'm wondering, not every one of the companies that you acquire necessarily has a sophisticated marketing. Do they know what's working and what isn't?
Not necessarily. So a lot of the times I go into it hoping for any information that will be better than none. But a lot of the times we're kind of doing our own digging, and they might not have an event plan or a budget for paid advertising or a social strategy, but they do at least have communication with their existing clients, and they know how they're getting business, whether it's referrals or just little tidbits of information can really help drive some of those decisions.
Okay. So we're trying to get a sense of how they are growing their business, or at least maintaining. And then the next thing you said, and that's probably a close tie, is retention. And I've seen this happen a lot, where it's I know that we've just been acquired, and you send an email or whatever, or calls go out to the customer and say, don't worry, it's going to be the same old people and the service that you love, but now with more resources, right?
Right.
Curious,
Yes.
because it's always the same promise. It's going to be the same, but it's going to be better. And sometimes when you're acquiring and you start to talk to the customers, you find out, everything wasn't perfect. And so I'm curious how you balance this. We want to keep the customers, but we want to improve on the experience and how the communication sort of happens with them.
Absolutely. So we do send out kind of those mass messages with emails, and we have phone campaigns. We also then have the local reps and the account managers in those markets meet with clients, ideally face-to-face, phone calls as well, to make sure that they know who their point of contact is. And throughout the acquisition process, there's kind of a checklist that we follow, not just in marketing, but across the entire organization, from operations to finance, billing, you name it. And so when something does go wrong, or there's hiccups, which there always usually will be, we try to learn from it and make it better. And we have really found that transparency, and again, back to that communication, is key. We'll admit if something wasn't as smooth of a process as we liked it to be, and we try our best to remedy it and make it better moving forward.
And one of the things that occurred to me is that, a lot of folks think that email is enough. And when you listed email, phone, and face-to-face as sort of, to me, that's almost a minimum. We're talking about 3 channels. It probably would be better. I mean, could we text them? Could we also, do a direct mail piece? Is there anything else that you've tried in terms of, I'm going to just call it reassurance marketing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do a lot of in-person events, and they'll be smaller events. So whether it's a happy hour, or we'll host kind of an open house at one of our new spaces. We also do events for the existing employees of the company as well. So it's kind of a mixer, not just for their clients, but for their employees to come. Everyone gets that face-to-face time. Obviously, the last couple of years, that was a challenge, if not impossible, in a lot of the markets. So we're just kind of getting back to that now. But we've really found that when we build the relationships, and we can just get even 20 to 30 minutes of FaceTime with them, the emails, the text message, the phone calls we do send, we've sent mail in the past as well. All of that seems to resonate a little bit more when they can put some faces to the names.
We do business with people. And
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
it really doesn't matter the acquisition so much. I think a lot of times I recall, it's like, I really don't care even what the company is called. It's about who is working on my business, and do they care? Do they know my business? Do they care about my business? So it's fascinating. Just
Absolutely.
one last bit, and then we're going to bring on our next guest. But from this, the checklist that you've made, I know what I want to. Do you have like an acculturation kit where you say, okay, this is how now, because you've done this 3 times, where this is the US legal brand and this is for the employees, because we've talked about customers, but when we got to keep our employees too, because they're the ones that have the customer relationships.
Absolutely. We work with we're in the litigation space, and so we work with a lot of professional court reporters, videographers, things like that. And so part of the acquisition process is the relationship building with that client segment, as well as the actual clients that we're both working together to serve. And so whether it's the internal employees and even some of the court reporters, we have kind of welcome boxes and welcome kits. And that's when we host these happy hours, and we try to make them feel that they're part of the company. We host some virtual webinars as well to kind of explain to them who we are, what we do, where we're looking to go, make sure they know who their points of contacts are, and that they don't feel like they've all of a sudden just joined this big ship and they have nowhere to go and they don't know where they're steering.
All right. So it's a lot of very clear communications. All right, Julie,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank
We'll be
you, Drew.
back to
Appreciate it.
you. We'll see you in the gin tasting. Okay, now let's
All
bring
right.
on Isabelle Papoulias, who until recently was the CMO of MediaFly and is now the EVP of global expansion. She was the star of episode 176 of Renegade Marketers Unite and episode 19 of this show. Hello, Isabelle. Welcome back.
Hello, Drew. Great to be here. Always a pleasure.
So, first of all, where are you?
I'm in beautiful Chicago.
There you go.
Downtown. I'm in the office. I'm the only one here, but that's okay.
All right. And that's funny. We should come back to that. Okay. So I was looking at your bio again, and I couldn't help but notice at one point in your career, you were doing the marketing for a dance company. And was like dance a personal passion, or was that just a random stop?
Oh, no. Always a personal passion. Since my parents put me in a ballet class at age 7, I never stopped dancing. It's what I call my professional hobby. I still dance today. I mostly teach an array of Afro-Latin, African dances. And no, it's very, very, very much part of my life. Has slowed down because of COVID. Fewer social events and so on, but it's starting to pick up again now. So it's very much still a part of what I do.
Very cool. And so I'm just thinking when you were at this dance company doing the marketing, that must have felt like a dream job.
It was a dream job. In fact, it was a very interesting moment in my career because it was either get hired by Ogilvy and advertising, right, which I really wanted, or work for this dance company, the Parsons Dance Company, which at the time was my favorite company in the world. Needless to say, the salary wasn't the same.
Yeah.
But I felt that, and I agonized over it for several days, and it felt like if I said no to Parsons Dance, I would have regretted it the rest of my life as the dancer that I was. And so I did it, and I did it for a year, and I got out of my system, and I did get into advertising eventually. So
there you go. So you got to taste it. And I think that's such an interesting thing is, as you said, get it out of your system, particularly for the younger folks listening to it. If you have a passion like that and you can blend it with marketing, what you may find out is what you really like is marketing, and what your marketing matters a little bit less than the people that you're marketing and so forth, the company that you're working for. So, okay, it's funny when we did our podcast together in 2020, we talked about the impact of 2 acquisitions, and it was the second acquisition, as I recall, that forced you to completely reposition the company. Now, since then, you've acquired how many more companies?
5 and counting. 5. So the 2 were a very long time ago, Drew. It feels like a very long time ago. We're up to 5 now. Yes.
Oh my God. And so So when 2 forced a pivot, did another 3 force yet another pivot?
Yes, especially the one that we did, our acquisition of Inside Squared back in December. We've since also acquired Exec Vision. We're now, MediaFly used to be a sales enablement company, and we're now combining sales enablement with revenue intelligence, right? We're the only company that marries the two under one umbrella, and that was very much the reason for the last 2 acquisitions. So that absolutely forced a rebrand.
Oh my God, yeah.
And new messaging in the marketplace, which is, it's a test and learn process, right? And I think that's one of the things we can say about acquisitions is you have to have an open mind. You'll deploy tactics. Some may work, some may not work, and then it's iterative. You learn and you optimize from there.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all kind of a thing, right? And I'm wondering, so the first thing that goes through my mind when you acquire all these companies is that it's easy to reposition in the sense that you can say, well, now we have this and we have this, and we're the only company that have. It's another thing to have the product integration happen in a meaningful way, right? Because you can get ahead of it with messaging, but how, but it takes time to get the product to sort of work as one. I mean, just ask the folks who use Salesforce and try any of their acquisitions, the challenges that they face, and that these things are not as smooth as you might think. It's just a ton of engineering.
Right. And so I'm glad you mentioned this in terms of it takes time. It takes time, but unfortunately, you don't always have the time, right? Because investors have expectations, the board has expectations, and acquisition has happened, and they want to see results. And so to me, I'm on board with everything that Julie said in terms of the brand and customers and reassuring customers. One of the biggest challenges I see is the people. And I don't mean that the people are the problem, right? What I mean is it's probably my number one focus when we're going through an acquisition is the people, is how do we bring those 2 groups of people together, the 2 companies, especially if it's a larger acquisition. If it's a tuck-in, a much smaller company, and it fits very neatly within your existing value prop, it's not that disruptive. But when you're acquiring a company that's sizable, and let's just say, okay, because we're talking about marketing, you're absorbing a lot of new people in your marketing team, there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done. So as I always say, people had a day job before the acquisition happened. You still have to do that. Like marketing still has to happen. Demand gen, messaging, all those things. Now, on top of that, you need to absorb this acquisition. And you find yourself doing it while your team is still storming, right? If we think of, I really believe in that the team evolution of storming, forming, norming, performing, and those are self-explanatory, right? But I think what happens oftentimes is we are in a place where we need to perform at a very high level. We have to win while the team is still in the storming phase, right? People are still coming together. There's a chemistry building. People are still assessing their roles. Where does my role end and yours begins now that you're here? And there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done quickly. So over-communicating, hyper-prioritizing, setting expectations with leadership about what can happen, what cannot happen, being open to failure. Frankly, some things will not work, and that's okay. Those are the things that are typically my number one focus. So it's no, I'm taking the conversation a slightly different direction. It's not
I love
tactics, but that's impacts marketing, right? Because ultimately the people is what
totally. So I want to go back to, just for folks, just to get, so we have storming. Let's go through those, because
storming. Yeah. So storming, forming, norming, performing, and I forget who came up with the structure. It wasn't me, somebody famous. So storming is when a new team is just coming together, right? It's getting to know each other, not really understanding what we all do individually. Everybody's kind of on their best behavior at that point, because they don't really want to upset each other, but nothing has clicked yet. Forming is when things do start to click. There's a better understanding of where My responsibility fits with yours, and so on. So there's an evolution, and relationships, organic relationships, start to build within the team. Norming is when their synergies are in place, right? Okay, it's seamless. I get it. We're maximizing the outputs. There isn't a lot of friction, and performing is truly when you're at the A+ stage, and you're, that's as high as you're going to get. And you do need to go through all these phases. I mean, I that's why I like this. I mean, I think it truly is how we develop a team.
Well, and what's helpful about that framework is that you can also share that with the rest of the leadership team, because they all have the same challenge in every department.
Exactly.
And two, you can set time parameters. Now, my quick question for you is, to get from storming to performing, best case scenario, how long does it take?
That's a tough question. As long as possible. I mean, it's not going to be it's not weeks.
Right.
It's a few months. It's at least a quarter. It's at least 3 months.
At least 3 months in best case. In best case. Okay. All right. Well, that's
in my
awesome.
humble opinion.
Okay. And that's really great, because I think that the people aspect of this, just is so essential. Okay. We're going to come back to you in a second when we get to our gin tasting. But right now we're going to go to Kristin Russel. So let's welcome Kristin, CMO of Symplr. Hello, Kristin. There you are.
I'm here.
How are you?
Hey, Drew. I'm great. Thanks for having me here today.
Excited to have you on the show. Now, where are you?
I am in sunny Silicon Valley over here in California right now. So just north of Julie.
All right. Well, we've got the East, the Midwest, and the West Coast completely covered on this show. I love that. So now I also dug into your LinkedIn profile, and I noticed you earned a master's in public administration and then got an MBA in France. So what was on your mind with this career path?
I know. Yeah. So just for the record, like if we're not picking that up, like no career path is linear, and I am absolutely not an exception to that rule. But ultimately this whole thing kind of started with an interest in international finance, government relations. It was actually a combined master's of public administration and business administration, was with a year in France. But I will tell you, I'm Canadian and American. And it's like early on, I had dreams of being this kind of Canadian politician, bureaucrat. Like that was going to be my gig. I had a little briefcases at a young age with like all ready to go organized papers. And I quickly learned that, as much as I loved the dream, the reality of working in government was a little bit not my shtick. So I moved into consulting. And then from that, actually, this is on the nonlinear path, but got into technology, started a fintech company. I've actually sold that a couple times. And then from there, technology took me to healthcare, which ultimately got me to marketing. And I've been doing this marketing stuff for about 15 years now, and this is my spot. I'm
Okay.
happy. I'm not.
So there you go. We work away. We're not going to be in the government. And we're going to find our way eventually. Very cool. Okay. So now you've been at Symplr for almost a year, and how many acquisitions has Symplr made in the last year or two?
Yeah. So in the last 2 years, we've actually made 9 acquisitions, and 4 of those have been under my leadership. So far in 2022, we've already acquired 2 companies. We acquired we are on a tear. We acquired Greenlight Medical, which we've rebranded already to Symplr Spend. We're in healthcare operations, just to sort of give some context in terms of what Symplr does. Healthcare technology is our space, and we are one of the leading healthcare technology companies. But Greenlight Medical was our most recent acquisition. We acquired Midas in February. Back in 2021, we actually did 4 acquisitions. Halo Health, which is now Symplr Clinical Communications. Spin Fusion, which is now part of our Symplr Workforce Management. All 4 of those have been done since I've been on board. And then prior to my joining, we acquired Healthcare Source in July of 2021. So just as I was joining, we were just finishing the paperwork on that one. Symplr directory is what we call the prior company find that we acquired in February of 2021. And then 3 companies in 2020. I know, like you almost need a PowerPoint to keep up with this.
Oh my God. I mean, just by the way, just so I've, you had 9, and MediaFly had 5 and a couple for US Legal. I mean, we're talking, we got the right group of people here to talk about this conversation. It's funny. One of the CMOs in CMO Huddles was at Halo when you all acquired Julia Goebel.
Julia Goebel is
yes.
terrific. Yes. In fact, and I will say one of our lessons learned, and one of the things that we really pride ourselves on with these acquisitions is spotting terrific talent and making them part of the decision-making and the leadership team. And yeah, Julia is a big part of our leadership team here, a senior leader within Symplr.
So, and one of the things as you were talking, it occurred to me that you have a very specific brand strategy in place, sort of an architecture, is that it's Symplr blank. And so it's kind of, and you're giving up the equity of any of that other brand name. It sounds like you take what they do, and it becomes Symplr, whatever. And is that the structure that you sort of pretty much applied to these, or to these, the rebranding of these units, if you will?
Ish. So the reason I say that is I think, each acquisition is different. And so each strategy itself needs to be a little different. And so we've certainly brought on some companies that have terrific brand equity as well. And so it depends on what that brand is bringing and how we want to transition the brand. We are looking at we are a branded house ultimately. And so there is a brand strategy and a brand migration path. But I think, as Julie mentioned, we're really careful in terms of how quickly we move the organization, the customers, the messaging. We want to do that at a pace that feels natural and appropriate for each of those different companies that we're acquiring. But I will say, by and large, yes, we really want to move those folks over into a Symplr product name.
Right. And so what's interesting with this, and just for the folks that are listening, branded house is basically saying we have one brand.
Yes,
and then there's other brands that live underneath it. And I know most of the folks are quite sophisticated, but it is a big deal because you have to make that decision for the most part. I mean, there are some structures where you have a dual structure, like Microsoft has a lot of Microsoft products, but it also has the standalone things like an Xbox or things. So they've sort of have this mixture. But Adobe, as far as they're concerned, it's Adobe. When I talk to Ann Loons, they are a branded house, even though they acquired Magento and Marketo. And so I'm curious, is there a case yet where you said we can't afford to lose the equity of that brand that we just acquired, and so it's Symplr blank, and you're still using the name of the other company?
Absolutely. And there's, with 9 different acquisitions, if you sort of dug into our portfolio, you would see some companies with their name on them. Now, what I will tell you is, in terms of that transition, we're looking at how we transition components of the brand. Maybe the colors, the look and feel, the typography is going to change, but not necessarily the name right now. Or we'll do a slower transition. So let me choose one of our most recent acquisitions, Midas, which is a very well-known name in our industry. We think about that as a Symplr brand. So we'll call it Midas, a Symplr company or a Symplr product, depending on the case for each one of those different solutions. I can also say, I think from for us, our brand story has been evolving. We last year, right around this time, did a complete overhaul where we took a step back and said, let's look at the brand, let's look at that brand strategy and really make sure that we're tuned to where we're going so that the brand itself is big enough to continue the growth path that we're on. Yeah,
because your branded house, your house got your roof's got to get bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we had to move out of the little 2-story kind of thing into a bigger condo as we continue to grow.
And so I just want to, this is something that I do talk about in the book, and I really want to emphasize for folks that are listening. There are any number, in fact, you can go back to an episode I did on Renegade Marketers Unite. with Jennifer Renault, where she was at two companies, literally two companies, massive companies that acquired a bunch of brands and then got rid of those brand names, and sales went down 30, 40, 50% right away because they turned off the websites. People couldn't find it. And these were huge brands. And then they turned the websites back on and the business came back. So the migration is the key word that I heard there. We got to migrate these folks from one brand to another brand, and we don't have to do it in a day, right? I mean, that's one of the things you're talking about, because some of the brands you can sort of Symplr blank, but sometimes it's, this is the brand, a Symplr company, and there's a strategy that you phase people out because employees are loyal to it, customers are loyal to it, and it has equity, right? So do you spend time thinking about migration? Is that part of your overall?
Absolutely. We think about migration, we think about cross-sell, we think about upsell, 100%. That's a huge component in terms of what we're doing right now and how we're continuing to grow our pipeline. The other piece of that I would say is, we talked about communication to our employees, but communication to our customers as well. And so you can imagine, particularly in a B2B world, a customer who is maybe making an acquisition or acquiring a piece of software that's a particularly expensive piece of software, that's going to take them a period of time. And that software might have its own name internally. So us just changing the name, we want to make sure we're bringing those customers along with us. Now, on the flip side, what I will say, Drew, is as we do call these different companies, these different solutions, Symplr Contract, Symplr Spend, Symplr Directory, what we're able to communicate in that for our customers aligns with our overall strategy as well. So we've got this sort of approach where we're basically saying, look, we think there's this opportunity in this space called healthcare operations, meaning, so let me just get nerdy for 1 second, but in the world of healthcare, to run a hospital, there was a lot of different point solutions. We wanted to bring those all together and provide an enterprise offering, cost savings, reliable data governance, all of those good things. Well, if you think about it from a strategy point of view, I want a customer who's using one product to know that they have opportunity to use others. So by calling it all the same thing, it does mean in one corner of the hospital, if you're using Symplr Directory and you hear about a Symplr workforce project, you're more likely to start to pull those together. So that piece is also important for us too.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. All right, we're going to take a quick break because I got to we'll talk about CMO Huddles, but we'll be back because I want to talk about that, because really what we're talking about here is going from sort of a product specific, market specific to a platform and becoming something bigger than that, which is everybody's dream in the SaaS world, is to be a platform. Okay, we'll be right back. It's time for me, Melissa, to talk about CMO Huddles. So launched in 2020, CMO Huddles is an exclusive community of over 100 highly effective B2B CMOs who share, care, and dare each other to greatness. Everything about CMO Huddles is designed to be a force multiplier, helping CMOs make faster, better, and more informed decisions, where one inspiring hour delivers 10 hours of perspiration saved. Since no CMO can outwork their jobs, CMO Huddles is here to help you outsmart it. Now, we just happen to have 3 huddlers here, and I'm just, Julia, Isabelle, Kristin, if any of you want to share an experience, please do. This would be a great time to do that. Alyssa, bringing it back. There we are. There we are. Okay, well, Isabelle, you've been with us the longest. Any sort of, you've seen Huddles grow. Any thoughts?
Yes, I mean, I've learned so much, and what I love the most is the format. I find the format to be very intimate. The smaller groups that are set up, it allows us to build personal relationships and reach out to people one-on-one and help each other. So I consistently walk away with tactics that I want to try, back at home, so to speak.
All right. Thank you for that. Julie, Kristin, I know you're both relatively new. Any thoughts on so far on how's it going for Huddles?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think the ideas and the insight and collaboration are great. I also think the validation is really helpful. Since we're all so busy and pulled in so many different directions, it's nice sometimes to hear how others are handling similar situations or challenges. And I do also enjoy there's a Slack channel. And so just seeing what people post and being able to communicate at any point is really beneficial as well.
I love it. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's a little bit of marchiatry going on here. Just being able to hear that, oh, I'm not alone. This is a problem that I'm facing is right. Kristin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I joined just yesterday. I was sitting in one of the CMO huddles on events, and every single time I prioritize these because I do learn a lot from the other marketers. I'm taking notes like, oh gosh, I should have thought that's a great idea. Different ways to look at outcomes, analytics from the events. I'm a fan for sure. And I love the Slack channel as well, particularly for finding resources.
It's funny you should mention that, that huddle, because the term revenue in the room, like, yes. That was like, to me, one of those light bulb moments. Was like, yes, that's an interesting way of thinking about events. And it's a little crass, but it's really helpful. So, all right, well, we just happen to have some recorded comments that we're going to play while we grab our gin and chilled glasses. Now, if you've already tasted it the night before, because it's early in California, totally understand, but we are going to take a quick break because I've got to go get my gin. So, Melissa, roll the video. Trying to roll the video. There we go.
And I love the way that you are able to bring together experts and practitioners to share their experiences and to accelerate learning.
Just by listening, I've tripled my experience.
It's a great way to have these conversations with your peers.
Even if you miss, an actual live session, just the capture you guys do of the notes, the tidbits, the takeaways, just super valuable.
It's such a nice forum to be able to bond with other marketing leaders that are facing the same things that you are.
There's just so much goodness from the learning, the dialogue, and everything else.
So it's really nice to connect to peers that are B2B.
The Slack channel, I think, is amazing. There's just some really helpful ideas and thoughts and things being shared in there as a backstop underneath the huddle actual meetings.
Because of the format of the CMO Huddles, there's 15 people on each of the subgroups. It makes it really easy to build one-on-one with
community that I think I really needed right now. So thank you.
If you're a B2B CMO who can share, care, and dare with the best of them, ping me, Drew Neiser, on LinkedIn, or apply at CMOHuddles.com. Okay, because all of our guests have a connection to France, today we will be comparing Citadel, which is a gin of France, and in fact, you guys can do the whole tasting in French, as far as I'm concerned. And Laura, you going to lead that because normally our producer is in Prague and our internet connection is a little slow. So Laura, what are we tasting and what's the story here?
So the first gin we're going to be tasting is going to be a Citadel, and if you guys can help me pronounce it with your lovely French accents, it's Citadel Jardin d'été. Jardin d'été, right? Something like that.
Jardin d'été. I think it means summer garden.
Yes.
Boom, summer garden.
It is distilled.
It tastes like a summer garden. Funny enough.
Isabelle's got the best French accent on that one. I'm going to go with hers. Isabelle nailed it.
Thank you. I decided not to drink the gin in the office, even though no one is here to see me do it, but I left it at home.
God, that's so discreet of you.
I'm over here having a little taste. It's like 9:30 in the morning on the West Coast, but
yeah, breakfast of champions. Good for you. Well, let's just keep going here. Any thoughts? What did you think of this particular gin?
Well, are you asking me?
Yeah, no, Kristin, go for it. Yeah, what'd you think?
Yeah, so I guess, like, boy, I really should have like gathered my thoughts on this. I'm going to go with it's definitely fruity and light. Feels very summery. So I'm kind of a Manhattan drinker myself. But this would be something I would definitely serve at a dinner party, and particularly if I had dinner avec Isabelle et Julie, on peut d'avoir un petit goût de ça.
Génial.
Voilà.
That sounded good. Julie, any thoughts on
Yeah, I tried mine last night and definitely agree. It was very fruity and that aromatic. The garden senses definitely came out. I hadn't had gin in a very long time, so it was kind of a nice introduction back into the world of gin.
Well, not everybody tastes gin straight, but if you chill it a lot and you have a cold glass, can be quite a sipping experience. Well, I wanted to just bring on our botanical expert, because we have an unusual botanical, and you guys have cited the fruitiness of it. Is Nicole here? Nicole,
yes, I'm here.
Nicole,
Hi, everyone.
What the heck is Charante Melon?
So Charante Melon is a small, sweet heirloom cantaloupe grown in France. It's the same size and shape of a softball. And I have 2 fun facts for you today. So the first one is that the melon has its own festival in Cavaillon, France. And the second one is that it doesn't travel well. So for you to taste an authentic Charante melon, you can only find it in France.
Very cool. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for that. And by the way, I do think, because we've never had this is a first French gin. Second, we've never had one with any kind of melon in it. And it does change its direction. I mean, some of the other spices, botanicals are kind of common. Oh, but this also has cantaloupe in it. Oh my God. Anyway, let's just do a quick comparison to Bombay. Did anybody have any thoughts on this versus Bombay? Oh my
That's kind of the face I made last night.
Yeah, relatively speaking, it kind of tastes like gasoline. Sorry, Bombay, but
ooh, I'm a big Bombay fan, so I'm intrigued. I didn't taste them last night because I have guests this weekend, so I saved them for this weekend. But now I'm very intrigued.
All right, so here's what I want you to do. So I did with the Citadel, I just did a straight up martini with a nice piece of lemon. I don't even think I put any vermouth in it. Really chilled glass. It was amazing. I can't recommend it enough as a straight up martini if you can go that way. And I sort of moved beyond Bombay. Fine for gin and tonics, but this is a really interesting gin.
Interesting. Thank you for the gin, as always. Even the ones that you sent in the past have been fantastic, so it's always a treat.
You'll get a big kick out of it. You'll get it. All right, we're gonna get back to the show. Laura, thank you for that. All right, so now here's the deal. Since we just finished tasting a French gin, this is a good time for me to ask, what would Ben Franklin say? Now, you wonder why I would even mention Ben Franklin in France. Well, he spent 9 years there, and he was very happy in France. In fact, he almost stayed there even after the Revolutionary Wars ended. And I want you to know the reason I'm so obsessed with Franklin is, and I describe him as America's first chief marketing officer, is that he was in France to get Louis XVI to fund our war effort. Massive amounts of money. We got all the weapons and we got experienced military officers and ultimately the naval support that turned the tide of the Revolutionary War. And sadly for Louis, probably cost him his head because it bankrupted the country as he helped ours get established. So I think, dear Ben, when considering our conversation about the challenges CMO face making acquisitions work, would advise nimbleness and agility versus a rigid prescriptive approach, noting, can anything be constant in a world which is eternally changing? Okay, thank you, Ben. Now back to this. Let's talk about, with all 4 of us on camera, trigger points where you realized that you needed to rethink your go-to-market strategy. I mean, Isabelle, we started there, your go-to-market strategy or your brand story. So let's bring Melissa, if you can, let's get us in the magic 4 square. Perfect. So when was that moment where you realized that you needed to rethink the go-to-market?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm not, you can start if you want, that's fine.
No, go ahead, Julie, go ahead.
All right, well, for one of the brands that we acquired, for us, we had it right, and maybe we had pieces of it right, but when the sales team starts to go out and the account managers start to go out and have conversations with our existing clients and with new prospects that we're trying to bring in, when the story wasn't really cohesive and it wasn't working and the sales weren't coming and the deals weren't getting into the pipeline and things weren't moving as fast as we would like or as much as we would like, that's when we kind of take a step back and say, okay, something's not working here. What is it? And then obviously there's so many different areas that we can dive into to see. But for one of the acquired properties, it was definitely a challenge to get the two sales teams aligned and make sure that people were clear with who's doing what and how.
And I just want to sort of, at that point in time, are you still selling what the old company did alone? Or are you selling some kind of combo of the two?
Kind of a combo of the two. So similar to what Kristin was saying, where if someone's using one of our services in this area, we want them to know all the other ways that we can help as well. So there's definitely opportunity to cross-sell and upsell existing clients on both sides of the fence with everything that we have to offer. And so when we tried to do that and it wasn't really resonating, the light bulb wasn't going off, and we start to kind of change the messaging, change the story slightly, and then you start to see the light bulbs, and then you start to see the deals come in, and we're able to produce the content and everything else that sales needs to enable the deals to keep moving. That's when we kind of are able to hone in on what's working and lean more into that.
Really interesting. And again, we get back to sort of this nimbleness of the thing. It may not be exactly what you think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that's so interesting. Isabelle, you were going to say something in this area.
Yeah, we've had quite a few. I mean, after 5 acquisitions, like trigger moments of change, from what Kristin said of underestimating an acquiring company's brand equity and essentially shutting down the brand too soon and demand dropping as a result. And so realizing that and then reinstating it, from expanding our TAM and then having to readjust, right? So going from enterprise to also adding down market as our ICP, and then realizing that we don't internally have the resources to both on sales and customer success to handle the volume that was coming our way. So readjusting that, from rolling out a message that was too lofty. So it's the challenge between having an investor message versus a buyer message. Investors want to hear something that's, let's call it sexy, you know, and buyers want something perhaps a lot more tactical, right? So how do you strike the balance there? So there's been quite a few examples of planning for one thing and then having to adjust because it didn't go exactly as planned.
Now, just in case we have some listeners who aren't as familiar with all the acronyms that Isabelle, we've got TAM, which is total addressable market, and ICP, which is ideal customer profile. And those things are really interesting in this part of this thing because you were marketing towards a specific group of people with a market, and in theory, when you make an acquisition, your total addressable market grows or not. Like, I mean, it's interesting and Kristin, in your world of healthcare, I mean, does the total addressable market grow, or is it simply getting more revenue per customer?
Yeah, it's not always about the TAM, the total addressable market, growing in our world. It's certainly some of the acquisitions we've made over the last, decade have absolutely grown that TAM. But in other, there's a different reason for each one. In some cases, we're augmenting technology in the portfolio, we're augmenting the actual product, or we're even, and in other cases, I would say we are acquiring customers and looking to grow that TAM. So it's a little bit of a case by case in terms of what is the rationale for the deal. And ultimately, that actually even goes into how you measure the effectiveness of the acquisition and kind of how you bring this whole thing to light.
And we're going to get to that, but I want to stay where we are for a second, because Isabelle, you mentioned you mentioned getting rid of a brand too early, and that the migration was just like it turned off the brand and boom, you felt it immediately. In that situation where they're considering turning off the brand, is there any sort of thinking back now, there were signs that you could have, how could you have done a little more due diligence or something to help you know that you can't turn this brand off yet?
I would say, this is a general answer. I would say if it's not broken, don't fix it. That's the first thing. And you need the time to ask questions. You need the time to get a sense. I mean, you could also put a survey out there in the market and just do a poor man's awareness study and get a gauge there. You can spend more time talking to customers, doing more social listening and so on would be recommendations. And we didn't take the time to do any of that.
Interesting. Okay. That there, and I think when you started to talk about customers, to me, that's when the light bulb went off, because what you really can find out, and I'm going back to this other podcast that we did, is that there are some cases, even with small brands, where the product person relationship, the buyer and the user are almost identify themselves with that company. The way, say, a Marketo or an Eloquent, those folks were really deeply involved, and that in fact it kind of defined their role. And so if you take that away from them, they're suddenly like adrift. And so finding out the level of, for lack of a better word, my brain's not working as well, engagement and connection that they feel to the brand, which I don't think is a survey. I think that's sort of a qualitative, thing that you sort of feel once you get someone a drink in their hands and say, so how do you feel of the brand? And where's it fit into your life? And it's like, it's everything. So interesting. Julie, when you look at this, and were there moments, trigger points for you that we haven't talked about in terms of we need to rethink this thing?
I was just going to kind of add on to what you just said. We've done some kind of focus groups and brand loyalist interviews of both internal employees and external clients to kind of look for what are the things, what is the essence of the brand that they really truly like. And so we don't want to get rid of that, obviously. And sometimes we do find, kind of back to the people do business with people, a lot of the times it's the relationships and not so much the actual company name. So by being able to say something, a US legal support company, but still having that level of personal connection and interaction has made a lot of the transitions easier in some ways, in a lot of the cases.
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about something as simple or not simple as, when do you change the email addresses of the acquired company? And I know that it was funny as well. One of our huddlers was lamenting that they had brought 9 companies together there, and they've been together for 3 or 4 years, and there were people who were still using the email of the original company, and how hard it is to get folks to really embrace the new brand. So as you're migrating these things, just keep that in mind. You can't just flip a switch and say, all right, everybody's using this new email, because it's hard. People are connected to it. It takes time to do this. All right. Well, Kristin, you brought up this issue, or this opportunity of measurement and metrics. When you look at an acquisition that's been integrated now a year later, what are you looking for, and how do you know that this is sort of the sign that this acquisition was a success?
Yeah. And I keep saying it's kind of like not one size fits all. And that is very much true as well with the metrics themselves. We look at the deal thesis. Why did we acquire the company? I talked about that a little bit kind of earlier on. Is it for growth of the TAM, or is it for a technology acquisition play? Depending on that, we're going to apply different metrics to the acquisition. We'll look at a variety of different things. The other point I would make is, there's a checklist that we put together for every acquisition, and running through the checklist itself does not just mean success. So we could go through and check off all of the items. We could do the brand transition. We could have the turnover. We could turn off the old website, and we could do all of those different elements. And of course, it's not just marketing as well. We've got this with finance, with our service and our sales teams, and we still may not have customer or employee satisfaction. So it's ultimately the metrics that we look at that help determine how we're doing. And it's going to be things like NPS. So the Net Promoter Score will give us a gauge on customer satisfaction by that acquired customer over time. We're going to look at things like our success of cross-selling into the new organization. So are we seeing that penetration pipeline and cross-selling? We're going to look at the number of customers acquired by each acquisition over time as well, and average revenue per customer. Those are probably some of the bigger ones. From a brand perspective, I'm going to look at, and Julie talked about this a little bit. I thought it was great. We run a brand survey twice a year. We look at how is our brand performing and how we measure those acquired brands as well in our brand survey. So we're still looking at the older brand names just to kind of get a sense of where are we transitioning? Where's there still opportunity?
Yeah. And I think having that brand tracking has got to be so valuable, because at some point you'll see, you know what, that brand isn't that strong anymore against this target audience, and we can turn it off. Then you really have some facts at your fingertip. Julie, Isabelle, were there any other, when you look at metrics, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that part of the conversation?
No, I want to double click on everything that Kristin said and just add maybe a little more color around the cross-sell, because I think that's hugely important, especially as you make more and more acquisitions, and probably Kristin and I can relate to this. You become a platform with multiple products and perhaps even services, huge opportunities to cross-sell to your customer base, even more so than perhaps more emphasis on cross-sell, even net new logos. And so I think that's a big opportunity, certainly for us. We're looking much more closely at those types of KPIs.
So you brought up platform, and I mentioned before the break, the sort of the holy grail of all this in SaaS land is that you get in there and then you have this platform, and oh, by the way, you could add this and it's right there, and you could add this. We all know that when you make the acquisition, that it doesn't become a platform, it becomes a platform idea. The platform is actually delivered probably when the whole thing is torn down and rebuilt, which never happens, or you get this jerry-rigged thing, right? And so I'm curious how you all, because this matters in the scheme of things, the engineering at some point matters because you're marketing what you got or the promise of what you have. Talk a little bit about what you've learned from this sort of the engineering integration and how to manage that promise of platform, maybe before platform is even there, technically.
I'd love to jump in there, Drew, and then Isabelle and Julie, you guys can let me know if you agree or totally disagree. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. And I think from our perspective, there's a couple things. So there's the value we can offer our customers right now. And even though the vision of the platform is something that's coming, I try, and we're working really hard to make sure our sales team and our customers understand that there's the right now benefits and the work that's coming down the pike. So we distinguish between what we have today, which is all of the benefits of, as we grow, having fewer vendors to manage, standardized solution deployment, data governance practices, enterprise security. All of that comes with just having one single vendor managing kind of similar processes across the board. We also, though, do talk to our customers about both our vision and how we are delivering on that vision. So we've made it really clear, here's how we're and I think any organization has to do this, like here's how we see this coming together. And oh, by the way, here's the $1 out of $5 that we're investing in our R&D to go build this vision. So this is what that looks like. And this is what you can expect 6 months, 1 year, kind of making sure that the customers and our employees as well understand both where we are today, but where we're going, and then getting those points on the board as soon as we can. To me, that's really critical, but I don't know, Julie.
Yeah, no, and I love that because it's not over-promising and under-delivering. We're not in the world of vaporware. There is this other things are coming, but what we have is really good right now. Because remember, you were using it before, and now it's better because look at the wrapping we're putting around it. And it's not necessarily where it's this integrated platform. It will get there, but still it's better because of this other corporate capabilities. All right, well, we're running out of time here, so I want to thank you all. But first, I want to get a quick final words of wisdom. Think of this as a Tuesday tip. One tip for CMOs new to the managing acquisitions. Just give them one tip. Start with Isabelle.
Over communicate early and often, even way before the acquisition, way before the due diligence process, as soon as you know.
As soon as you know, over communicate. All right, great. Julie Feller, one tip.
Agreed with the communication. Also, make sure that everyone across the organizations agree on the metrics that we're measuring for success, but also those trigger points of when something's not working so that you can be in alignment before you even start.
Perfect. And Kristin, Russel, one tip.
Don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Amazing. Amazing. You guys are amazing. You're great sports. Thank you, audience, for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about product marketing with Allison Havner and 2 guests to be named. Cue the music, Melissa. Renegade Marketers Live is produced by Melissa Caffrey. Our intern is Laura Parkin. Our botanical expert is Nicole Hernandez. For show notes, past episodes, and the latest on my book, Renegade Marketing 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, please visit renegade.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser, and until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.